Okay, I'm reviewing 3 Spider-Man films. This is going to be, I think, we're going to tell why these aren't my Spider-Man movies, or why these aren't my favorite, whatever's shorter. For Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Amazing Spider-Man 1. Okay. Well, I can say what they all have in common, therefore these are all the weaknesses. Is that they all feel really, really, really cluttered. Especially in the third act. Like, just when you think that it can't get more cluttered, it gets even more cluttered by the second act goes on. Then it gets more cluttered by the third act. And there are some story elements that go nowhere. Like, what's Miles' story? How did he change throughout the course of the film when he doesn't he have a character arc until the third act? You don't just get a pep talk and suddenly your character change and go from being competent and being incompetent. It doesn't work like that. It's hard. It takes hard work. It takes discipline, and the film barely focuses on him. It focuses most of the jury time on Peter Parker from the other dimension because the Peter Parker in Miles was different. She got killed off. And then we find out Spider-Gwen's in it, which is the same Gwen who's in Miles' class, who goes to the school. And we find out the Kingpin wants to kill Spider-Man and bring his family back from a different dimension in his life. Because his family died in a car accident after he left him, his son and his wife. So the Kingpin has put in a bunch of hitmen on the Free Spider-Man people. But it turns out there's even more Spider-Man. Oh, from different dimensions. One's New York Spider-Man. One's a Chinese girl with a best friend mechanical spider robot who can turn into a transformer. I am joking you not. And this is the most sane, rational thinking out of the bunch. I kid you not. Am I taking crazy pills? I feel most of the time when I'm watching these films, I'm trapped in a mental institution. We're hyped on crazy pills not to make you more sane, but to make you crazier than you are. Because everything in this movie Into the Spider-Verse is just too much. And you expect to spoil, and there's hardly any quiet moments. Okay, if you're going to do a Spider-Man movie that's really convoluted, really out there, right? You have to have some quiet moments. But there's barely any quiet moments. Moments for not quiet moments. I mean quiet moments to let you sympathize with each protagonist, with each Spider character from several dimensions. That's not much for Miles, and including Miles 2 in that category. Miles does get that moment, and the place in it, and with his Uncle Ian, Uncle Eddie, who his eyes can't go through, is killing Miles, so he ends up getting shot by Kingpin because he's a traitor to the Kingpin. Then Miles takes the fall as the Spider-Man identity, which is in the Spider-Man costume, and then his father thinks that Spider-Man killed Eddie, Uncle Eddie. Then he actually sees, so out of nowhere, I can't remember what made him change his mind. Everything's going rapidly fast. Faster than him. Everything's going fast. To a point, it just causes more confusion than explanation to the brain. In fact, you have to slow this down with your mind to really think really hard what the hell's going on. The only thing that actually makes sense is Peter Parker that got killed from Miles' dimension. And that's the only scene that makes more sense than Miles himself, who is the main protagonist of the film, the main character. And he gets more fleshed out and he gets killed off in the first act of the film by Kingpin's henchmen. And but that ties into because you see because Peter had this great life. He had people that supported him. He'll kill him, and none of them died. Except for Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's still dead. But he was inspired by Uncle Ben before he died to become that man, the Spider-Man. And the blah blah blah. And so Spider-Man ends up during a fight, he gets real beaten down. And he says to Miles to always get up. And he signed Miles' task and he cannot do it because he does not know how to work his spider powers. Any of them. He doesn't know how to do any of them on command. And after the pep talk and this emotional, heartwarming, tender, soft moment between Miles while Miles he got tired and abandoned from all the excitement from Spider Dimensions. You got a heart-to-heart moment with him and his father, saying that he sees something special in Miles. That's why he's so hard on him. So, and it's a really nice moment, I admit. But then out of nowhere, he can use all of his powers, not just some of them or half of them. No, all of his powers intentionally. Hooray for Miles! Oh, I care so much about him. No, I don't. Oh, but we saw him struggle so much. Very little he struggled. Hey, sure, he struggled in the first half. We saw him struggle in the first half of the film. Or yeah, it's the film doesn't really focus on him. It focuses more at Peter on some of the other dimension, who has a much more interesting character and gets more screen time when I think about it than Miles once he enters the picture. And once also Spider-Man that gets killed off enter the picture, focus more on him than on Miles. Well, Miles is like this geeky out and narrating over how confident, how cool Spider-Man is, and how he knows what he's doing. Oh. And yeah, so I feel like I'm watching. I feel like now I was talking over the actions, make me wish I could be watching a better film, like Homecoming or Far From Home, or even Spider-Man 3. Those are all of them. Those are all the ones Spider-Man movies I loved. I didn't love the first two. These are the three I don't really love, but don't really hate. But I'm somewhere in the middle. So that's why So this is tiring. It's so much thrown at you. And the reason why he's working for Kingpin and Miles, his uncle, is because he's a villain. And, anyways, Peter's arc is that, his wife he went through a really rough divorce because he told his wife he didn't want a kid, who is MJ, who is Mary Jane, and he had to bury his Aunt May 16 underground. And he's, years passed, like a decade or so passed, and he's become a little roughly out of shape and let himself go because he's depressed. And feels really guilty how he hurt Mary Jane's feelings. Because he said he didn't want to have a kid. But it's okay, he has his happy ending. He goes back to his own dimension while everything's falling apart. While Miles decides to stay behind in his dimension. Everyone else goes back to their dimension, including Peter B. Parker, who's Spider-Man who's Peter Parker, and Peter B. Parker is Ben Parker, as that's what B. Parker stands for. That's Spider-Man's basically no name. And every dimension, as far as I know. Whenever he has a middle name, it's usually Ben Parker. His full name is Peter Ben Parker. As Spider-Man has always been Spider-Man's middle name. And if I remember correctly, it's spelled the same way as Ben's Parker. It's just spelled Uncle Ben. And, so Peter gets outsmarted by, Miles because he won't go back to his dimension willingly because he's worried about messing up again. And he realized what he told Miles, saying it's a leap of faith, just like being Spider-Man. So Peter, because of Miles, is ready to be a dad, and when he's after mentoring him very briefly by swinging with Miles in the woods, and then running into Spider-Gwen. And then we get her backstory, and then, oh my god, it's too many backstories. I didn't realize what the problem was. There's too many backstories explained. It's like, oh god, it gives you a headache. You feel like you're like you're trying your mental. And that's the intention. I don't want this. I don't want I don't want anyone to think that this is the best Spider-Man movie ever or the best animated anything, because it's not. I want Spider-Man to make a good animated film, but not if it's going to lead us to. But not if it's going to do this shit. Whatever it's doing. I'm not sure what the moral lesson is, or what the story is about, or what the whole point of it was. It just feels like the main movie just for, hey, we made a different animation style for animation. So I don't care. That's not enough to give it a 10 out of 10, or even a 9 out of 10, not even a 6 out of 10. It's a solid 5 out of 10. It is mediocre at its best. But one was said, this is not the worst out of the 3 I've reviewed. No. This is the best out of the 3 I'm reviewing in this video. The worst is Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now I do like all 3 of these films, but they're not great. And there's so much mediocre you can take with Spider-Man to the point you're wondering, when are we going to get to the good stuff? The real good stuff. Not any of these 3 that I'm reviewing, obviously. So Spider-Man 2, I don't know what the story is about. The plane crashes on his parents after his parents abandoned him because they worked for the Sea Isles Club, and now they're on the run. and cut to Spider-Man swinging after the plane supposedly dies, including his father, which was the last one that alive, so he possibly, even though his body's never found, he possibly could have made it. In fact, spoiler alert, he did. In fact, it's in a deleted scene where he confronts Peter and says the risk of being him, and how the world is on his shoulders, and says with great power must also come great responsibility, and saying, I love you, son. It's the only thing that is the most emotional, heartwarming, sincere, softest moment I have ever seen and ever of any times Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. And it's like, why the fuck would you cut that out, you dickheads? I'm thinking to myself, is it because they don't want to tell us, they don't want us to give a shit, they just want us fucking money? Those bastards! And I'm fucking nostalgia, because if we have a nostalgia going on, clearly that will give a shit, like the MCU films, or any comic book film that's financiable and success, makes money. And look, it doesn't work. It's not always that easy. Sometimes it is, but not always. People are not always stupid. They sometimes can see through people's intentions. And if you think that I'm wrong, I looked at the special features. That's exactly what the intentions were. To make Spider-Man, they said, see, we wanted to go from this realistic take on Spider-Man and go back to what Spider-Man used to be. A Spider-Man, and make a Spider-Man movie about Spider-Man. You're trying people give them a wet dream of nostalgia, aren't you? And hopefully it somehow will work and lead to actual movies that are better. And I'm not gonna act like I hate Spider-Man 2, but I don't love it. Just like Spider-Verse. Anyway, after he defeats the Rhino, who will become Rhino in the third act, but we'll never see the climax and and also the payoff that I hope the trailers were promising us for a Rhino fight between Spider-Man and Rhino. That happens in the third act too. It turns out all the scenes you saw with Rhino and the trailer, and every trailer, and I have seen every trailer, even the final one. That's much Rhino you're going to see. You've seen every scene with Rhino in the trailer, and you've seen every scene of Rhino in the movie when he has the Rhino costume. Played by Paul Giamatti. Yes, they got Paul Giamatti, and they didn't use him. They didn't let him be the Rhino. And it's sad because he does a good job. He's only giving a few lines, but he does a good job playing this big meathead idiot. That's just mostly funny. He does this like, I am the Rhino. It's funny. It's actually kind of cool and funny. Yeah, so badass and funny. So he does a great job playing it. Everyone does a great job acting in this performance. And so and I was going to say Harry's father dies, but he doesn't really die. No, he gets his if you get to briefly, but it's explain what really happens to him. They just like decapitated and remove his head from his body and froze it. And you're gonna see it in the last final scene of when the guy in the cloak, that's in the guy in the shadows, is walking through all of these high-tech stuff, and there's one symbiote, and one has octopus, and it's basically foreshadowing the Sinister Six that he's going to make. And I'm guessing Osborn is part of that. So we would have gone in Norman Osborn to eventually take on the role of the Green Goblin. But then Harry becomes the Green Goblin in this film instead of Norman because he supposedly faked his death off screen. It's the whole him faking his death is very briefly explained, but I got it. Okay, it's just very briefly explained and briefly shown to you, but it's there. Trust me. I'm deciding to delete this down. I'm going to delete things because it was the actual film. Okay, So he wants to take his vengeance out on Spider-Man after figuring out that Peter and Spider-Man are the same thing by dropping Gwen several stories into the clock tower. His girlfriend, who he was going to fall to, to college with, and changed his location from being a friendly neighborhood Manhattan Spider-Man and to, well, someone else, which I forget what the location is. So he decides to write this this love letter and web saying how I love you, Gwen Stacy, and he's like swoops her off while swinging, and he says, I'm just going to follow you wherever you go, I'm just going to follow you. Where you go, I go. And he is just thinking, there are also crimes in that place, right? I can be Spider-Man there, right? Yeah. So, everyone's playing crimes where that. Everybody's playing crimes where that is, so he can be Spider-Man there. So it sounds like this. So it sounds like this is the movie, but it's not. You see, Electro gets tortured in this prison while they're sparing on several people working to power them up and be obedient for the Sinister Six. Then Harry finds this out and breaks Electro out so he can get revenge on Spider-Man. And how it ends is these shake hand and team up, and then you have this sweet, heartwarming, tender moment, and it has this music, awesome, beautiful music playing. You just want to cry because it's just that beautiful. Then it seems like it's going. So it seems like it's going to end on that note, and I'll pick a few years off with a sequel when Harry and Rick Electro and the rest of the Sinister Six follow them to where the new country, Gwen and Spider-Man, and then you should kill off Gwen in the third installment, you jackasses. I'm sorry. I'm putting logic. I forget. I should do what the MCU's telling me. Don't put logic in something that makes no fucking sense in a universe that is inconsistent. And, okay, here's my biggest problem with the film. Okay, we're going to talk about the ending, but here's my biggest problem with the film. Where the fuck did he get the new suit? I mean, I like it as much as the next person, but what was wrong with the old suit, and why did he change the suit to this suit? And what happened to the old suit? Did no one... And I asked that to look up. Apparently, they have no explanation. Oh, God. So, yeah. They're about as consistent as Batman and fucking Robin with these films. All three of these films I'm reviewing, which is Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse. And so, after fighting Electro and killing him with the help of Gwen Stacy, it looks like he was happily all out. Well, anyway, nope. Green Goblin, played by Harry, is now Green Goblin, Harry's Osborn, Peter's best friend. That was Gleefree mentioned and Gleefree focused on. It is now the Green Goblin after the film barely focused on his mental illness after his physical illness, dying of something similar to ALS. And he took the cure, but no, it didn't work. It just mutated him. And also, Peter understand that he was dying, but he just couldn't give him his blood because it could turn him insane and evil. So, Spider-Man. Okay, see, this is why I think Andrew Garfield is this average tone, and Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield is average tone, and well, Maguire as Peter Parker as Spider-Man is just a bit of a low IQ. Is because of this. When he says the reason why he doesn't want to. The more I thought about it, the more you think, wait, you don't want to give him because he might turn evil and might mutate him? So, is it really worth losing your best friend over a risk that may or may not happen? Apparently, yes. Yes, it is. So wait, that's... And then he just swings off, and now this is what turns him against Spider-Man. You're rightfully so, is angry. Then he just turns against Peter once he figures out his identity. Because he figures out how he spoke to Gwen. And wanna know how he figures? He figures out how he's staring at Gwen. Because that's how Peter stares at Gwen. And that's what is in a romantic way. And he figured it out with his